Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. I got a really good episode for you guys tonight. I've got Mark with me, and Mark had a couple of Class A encounters while he lived in Oregon, and one of these encounters were really strange. He had everything happen to him from orbs to just not feeling well, a lot of strange things that happen on this property called Owl Moon Labs. And if that sounds familiar, I've had a gentleman that owned that property on the show before. His name is Daryl, and a lot of strange things happen on this property, but we're going to jump into that in just a second. But before I do, if you've had an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at video@jazzcreativear.com. Let's jump right into the episode. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. How's it going?
Good, man. I'm really excited to hear about these encounters. Thanks for jumping on last minute. I'm excited for the audience to hear this. So why don't you take us back to this first encounter you had in 2019 in Oregon?
Okay, so I've always been into archery, shot competitively for quite a while, and I've always bow hunted. So September 2019, heading over to Eastern Oregon for my annual elk hunt trip. Was taking off Monday morning when I first got off work, and heading over. Was going to be there about 2 weeks. By myself most of the time. My one buddy was going to show up just for Labor Day weekend, and then he was going to be gone. I'll still be there for a few days by myself. So anyway, it's a place I've gone for. I couldn't begin to tell you how many years I've been hunting over there. Know the place like the back of my hand. You could drop me off anywhere. I could tell you exactly where we were and walk us out. So had my tree stand set up at the top of the hill that I'd hunt in the morning. So everybody knows, well, not, hunters wise know, always hunt with the wind in your face. So morning, the wind's coming up the hill. So I sit at the top, bottom of the hill in the evening. So was sitting there in my tree stand every morning, like clockwork, 9:30, I would hear grunting behind my tree stand. Had no idea what it was. Didn't recognize the sound, and I've been in the woods since I was 6 or 7 years old. So I just kind of put it in the back of my head, didn't think anything of it. Got into the elk a few times, didn't get any shots or anything. And so on a Wednesday evening, I was sitting down at the bottom at this where there was an old water trough in there from people that used to run cattle in there. There was a wallow and then some bull rubs. So I was sitting in there in the evening, and wind in my face. Well, back behind me, I hear a twig break. Just kind of, it's a bunch of windfall back there. In this area, you can't be quiet walking in. It's a squirrel sounds like a herd of elephants. There's so much windfall, and it's all dried out. It just cracks, snap, pop. Well, I hear a branch break behind me, or a twig. And I'm like, crap, I'm busted. So I sat there and I start hearing footsteps coming up behind me. And I'm like, I didn't get it. It's like, whatever it is should be busting and running from me. Should hear me or catch wind of me. You can trick eyes, ears on any animal, but you cannot screw with their wind. They're going to catch you. If they smell you, they're gone. Well, it gets right behind me. And I sat there and I'm listening, nothing. Then it turns off and starts going to my left. So I, put my release on my string. I kind of lean out, getting ready to draw back, waiting for it to step out. And it just goes right to the edge and it wouldn't step out. And then it would go back behind me and go to my right. And it would do the same thing. I'd turn, get ready to take a shot, nothing. Then it did this for probably 20 minutes, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then it gets right behind me. And it's probably maybe 20 yards behind, 15, 20 yards behind me. And all of a sudden I just hear wham, 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 a big, huge triple tree knock. I'm like, what the heck is that? And it's getting dark. And I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. So I throw my pack on, throw my pistol back in my holster. Out where this particular area, there's a lot of cougars. So while I'm usually sitting on the ground, I'll have my pistol sitting by me just in case I can't get off with a bow, that I have that pistol as a backup. So I hike out of there and I get back to camp, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. That was weird. Don't know what it was, but whatever. Back the next day, hunting up on the hill, same thing. Kept hearing that grunting, and where I had the tree knock and the grunting is maybe only about 500 yards apart, so it's not really that far. Um, my buddy shows up Friday night. I told him, "Well, yeah, I've been getting into the elk here and there," and I said I had this strange thing, and I told him what happened. He goes, "I'll bet you that was a tree knock," because we've always believed in Bigfoot, but it was one of those. It wasn't like set in our head until we actually saw something, proofs in the pudding type thing. He goes, "I'll bet that was a tree knock," and I'm like, "Well, you know what? You're probably right." And so, we just kind of talked about it a little bit and didn't think much of it. Well, I told him I kept hearing this grunting, and so finally Sunday, I'm like, "I'm going in there, Tom. I gotta see what's making that noise. I just don't get it." So, I get in, get sat down, probably a good hour before it gets light, and so, I'm just kind of sitting there, and it gets light and stuff, and I never hear anything. Just all of a sudden, out of the left side, I catch a little movement. So I turn my head real slow, and I'm just kind of looking with my eyes, and I catch a head pop out, pop back. I kind of thought to myself, that's kind of weird. It can't be a hunter, it's got to be a hunter though. I never heard him coming because like I said, a squirrel. It sounds like a herd of elephants going through with all the windfall and stuff in there, and it did it again, and I caught the brown. I'm like, it's got to be a hunter with his face painted up and stuff. And then it stuck its head out and just went and started staring at me. And it stared at me for probably 10, 15 seconds. And I could see, because it was leaning out from behind the tree, so I could see head and just a little bit of shoulder. He's probably 7, 8 foot tall. I just sat there like, what in the heck is that? Um, it didn't click. People always say, "Oh, I'd have been taking pics." No, you don't. You don't have time. You don't have time. You are so lost in that moment, not believing what you're seeing, not understanding what you're seeing. Um, so I didn't get any like great details. These people that say, "Oh, he's got block teeth," and I you don't even think of that. The things I did see, he was brown, real leathery face looking, the cone head, kind of a chocolate brown color. Um, couldn't tell anything in his eyes. He was too far away. He was probably about 40, 45 yards away. So, I mean, he wasn't horribly far away, but he was not close enough that I could get any detail. His nose looked like our nose, other than it looked like he'd gone quite a few rounds with Tyson and it was kind of flattened down. Um, but then he pulls his head back, and I'm like, in my head, that's when it finally clicked. Oh my God, that's a friggin' Bigfoot. Holy crap. And I'm just, at that point, I'm starting to shake. And same thing, I throw my backpack on, and I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm out. I'm done in the woods. I'm out of here. Got up over the hill, hit the creek bottom, followed the drainage all the way out, hit the road, got back to camp, packed up my stuff, and I sat down. And the adrenaline crash, finally hit, and I was coming down off of it, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, realized I'd peed my pants. It scared me bad enough. I peed my pants, and I had no idea I did when it happened. Never heard it leave. I don't know where it went. I don't know if it stayed there and I just walked past it. I never smelt it. Nothing. Like I said, and then I got my camp all packed up, and my buddy Tom shows up. And he goes, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm done hunting. I'm done." I didn't tell him what had happened at the time. And he goes, "Well, you still got like 6, 7 days here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm done. I'm ready to go home. Need to see the family. I'm done." And he's like, "All right." Well, I was just too physically and emotionally tired to drive home that night, so uh, left first thing in the morning. Just crawled the truck. Woke up, I don't know, probably 4 in the morning, something like that. Started the truck up and took off and headed home. Uh, didn't tell anybody for a long time. And what I ended up doing, I went to a buddy of mine that owns a tattoo parlor, and I had him put a tattoo on the back of my calf, and it's got the shape of Oregon with a tree with a Bigfoot stepping out, and then a star where it happened in the state. And just kind of, and he was a believer too, so it was kind of a little bit of an outlet on it, like uh, he was the first one I told what happened. I didn't even tell my buddy Tom. Tom's been my best friend since I was probably 15 years old. Um, and I'm 52 now. So at the time I was, late 40s. And I didn't tell him right away. And I finally ended up telling him. But so what I did, because I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think. I just wasn't sure. So I was on Facebook and I come across a Bigfoot page for Oregon, and I posted the picture of my tattoo on there and said I'd had a sighting, and a guy that was a retired police officer sent me a message on Messenger and said, "Hey, I got a couple questions. Would you be willing to talk to me?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I gave him my phone number over Messenger. He called me, introduced himself. His name was Mike, and I told him what had happened, and he said, "Yeah, it's pretty stereotypical for over there in the Blue Mountains." He says, "I do a lot of research over there, me and my group. That's pretty much what we hear, pretty much what we see color wise and stuff like that." Uh, and I'm like, I didn't know if he was going to take me or what. He said, "If he wanted you, you were dead. You you're in his territory. He could have taken you. That was not his. He was just as confused looking at you as him."
These encounters, Mark, they definitely, absolutely, affect you. And one of the first questions I like to ask my guests, and I've got more questions about your encounter, but one of the first things I like to ask is how did that encounter, your first encounter, affect the rest of your life from that point?
Well, at that point, I was like, "I'm done in the woods. I'm never going in the woods again. I am not going in the woods. If those things are out there, no way." Well, um, kind of what broke me a little bit of that, I had an encounter with a bear where I had a bear run me down one year, and I ended up where I couldn't sleep for a week straight. Just woke up nightmares and stuff, and so I finally had to go talk to somebody, and they sent me. They said, "Well, you're going right back in the woods." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And they're like, "Yeah, you are." So I just kind of took that attitude to it. Um, so I went to a friend of mine's that has a bunch of property that butts up to some big timber, and I just kind of used his property and just kind of got myself back in there. But oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of times it it makes you think a little bit more. When you're out there. There's spots. You always listen in the woods. When it gets quiet and there's no birds, there's nothing, there's a predator there. So it makes makes my hair stand up a little bit when I get into that situation, because it's like, is it another big guy or is it a cougar? In Oregon we had to deal with the cougars, the bears, stuff like that. So, it's always kind of in the back of your mind what's there.
It's good that you went and got some help and you were brave enough to go back into the woods. I know several guys that, it took that from them, and it sounds like you love the woods and spent a lot of time there. And a lot of these guys, they can't go back in there, and it's, understandable. But how, how long do you guys, or did you look at Bigfoot? How long do you guys sit and look at each other?
It was probably about 10-15 seconds. So I don't know exactly. I'm just kind of guessing, because I don't know if time slowed down or if time was going fast, but in my head, that's what it felt like, was about 10, maybe 15 at the most seconds. I mean, it was just, I could see, his eyes doing, this, moving a little, like looking me up and down and stuff. But, um, he never, it's not like I didn't see any facial expression changes, like he was getting mad, or because he was just pretty much straight mouth the whole time. The only the only details, that I did see that just kind of stuck in my head, because like I said, a lot of it I don't remember, or I just wasn't paying attention, because like I said, everyone says, "Oh, just I had to pulled out a camera or I would have shot it." No, you don't. That's the last thing. You don't. You're just your head is in a weird place, and you know. And the funny thing is, like with the picture taking, when I'm hunting, a lot of times, I'll have my phone on airplane mode, but I'll have it out where I can see it, because I like to pattern the animals. So if I see them coming through, I'll look down, after everything's done, to see what time it is, to see what time they're moving through. That way I can just, as I'm there, I can start to kind of pattern them a little bit. And my phone was right there beside me. Never even thought of picking it up to take a picture. Last thing on my mind.
You don't think about that when you have an encounter, and you just, your brain doesn't go there. I don't think you don't know what to do with it. It's something that's not supposed to be there. And so you just don't know what to do. And so, yeah, I don't know too many people. There's a couple, they're very few, but most people don't capture a picture or anything like that. And, 10 to 15 seconds, Mark, that's long enough, man. That's a long time, to sit there and look at something that isn't supposed to be there. So, that's pretty crazy, man. And I know this isn't Bigfoot related, and I don't know if you're open to talking about it, but I noticed you talked about getting charged by a bear. That's got to be pretty scary too, man. What happened with that?
Yeah, so we were over there. Actually, it's the same area, and it was probably, oh, maybe only about 300 yards from where the tree knock was. I was sitting there hunting, same thing. It was snowing that weekend, and I was getting kind of cold and had to pee. So I thought, I'm going to get up and walk back to the skidder road, which the direction I was going was probably maybe a mile and a half ish out. And it got to where the trail narrowed and there was a bunch of trees. So I had to duck down and I stuck my bow behind my back. And as I stepped up, when I got through, there was a bear cub standing about 3 feet from me. And it looks up at me and I went, "Bah!" And this isn't good. I mean, you just don't mess with bear cubs. And the bear cub took off and running. And then here come mama running right at me. And she stopped about 3 feet from me and she's stomping the ground and snapping her teeth at me. And the bear cub had bawled again, and then she spun and took off, and I just hit the ground, puking my guts up, all that stuff. And this was before, in Oregon, we used to not be able to carry a sidearm with us when we were bow hunting. So I would have never, even if it would have jumped on me, even if I would have had a pistol, I don't think I'd have had time to even pull it. But yeah, it messed me up pretty good. I didn't sleep, like I said, for probably a week straight, and ended up having to go see somebody to kind of get that worked out.
Well, I don't blame you, man. Like I'd have been done for. I don't know that I could have done what you did and gone back into the woods, because that is, man, 3 feet from a bear with their cubs. I mean, you're lucky to be here, man. You're very lucky to be here, because you don't mess with that. So with this thing going up behind you and knocking and doing all that stuff the day prior to your sighting, and then, seeing it and it scoping you out like that, I'm obviously was curious, but what do you think it wanted? What do you think it was doing there? Kind of what's your thoughts on that?
I think my train of thought is it was doing the same thing I was doing. You know, just like the animals, they know when hunting season comes around, they start hearing I hunt with a bow, but, they start hearing the rifles. They know what's going on. They vacate the area. Well, I think it's the same thing. The Bigfoot know what's going on. They know what's going on there. Maybe they're opportunists, and I shoot something, and you know every bow hunter's had it, and I don't care who you are or what you say. You've lost an animal. I mean, it's happened, and there's times where I've gotten something and just absolutely smoked the shot. Just I knew I was going to get some venison or whatever, and walk and find a huge puddle of blood after it'd been gave it an hour, and all of a sudden there's nothing there. So I don't know if maybe they come in, take your animal for food, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know.
I can see that. I mean, these things it's hard to explain a lot of the things that these creatures do. And I firmly believe that if you see one, there's probably another one really close by. I think they kind of run in tribes, or, I don't like using the word families, but I don't know what other word to use, but that's kind of what I think about it. So that makes sense. I know that Daryl introduced me to you, and Daryl had some really crazy encounters in Oregon, and has been on the show. Tell us a little bit about the encounter you had when you were with him.
We've had a lot of stuff happen to us there. Just kind of a quick rundown. We've had rocks thrown at us in there. We've had the tree knocks in there. We've had the whooping down in there. So, like with Daryl, every time we went up, we always took his truck and we always took food up there. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, don't do that. It's a bad thing. Shame on us for doing it," but we did it. And we had a stump that we would always put stuff on, and they just I think it is what it is just like your dogs at home. They recognize the sound of your vehicles when they pull up. You hear them in the house bouncing off the walls and stuff like that. Well, I think it's the same sort of thing. They recognize the sound of his truck. We literally got out of the truck, walked to the top of the edge of the road, getting ready to walk down into the down in there, and we heard the whoop, and we're like, looked at each other. Well, they know we're here, you know. Um, but the night I had my second sighting with Daryl, uh, it was during COVID, and the company I was working for had a shutdown. We had shut down they were shutting us down for a month. And so it was going to be a full moon one night. And he always was telling me when after I'd first met him and stuff that full moons, a lot of times he'd catch a lot of the sounds and the screams and all that. The weather was going to be nice that night. So I called up Daryl and said, "Hey, what do you think about going out tonight?" And he's like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." So we get up there and it's probably, I don't know, maybe an hour before dark. So we've still got plenty of time. And we kind of walk off over the edge and walk down in there, and we kind of split up a little bit looking for tracks, because every time you go in there, there's tracks. That's one thing that just blew my mind. Every time you go in there, there's new tracks. Um, and it's like a finger going down, and that whole ridge over the top, all the way down, you never hear a bird, squirrels, nothing. It is dead silent the entire time. You get off that ridge and go to the next one's over either side, it's normal woods, birds, chipmunks, squirrels, whatever. But anyway, so we kind of break down in there. We kind of split up. We're just looking for fresh sign, track, and stuff like that. And we find all kinds of weird stuff down in there, sticks stacked in like triangles and just weird stuff. And I found this great big um, brush pile that had been woven together. And I'm like, "Daryl, come check this out." And he comes and looks at it, and I'm like, "What?" It's obvious. It's not. It was done by hand. You can tell something with thumbs. Can I say Bigfoot did it? No, I don't know. I didn't watch him do it, so I can't claim that he did it. But who's going to walk down in there and weave branches together and all that kind of stuff? It's just, and then from then on, we started finding woven branches everywhere. But as I was showing that, he looks down the ridge a little bit. He goes, "Look, Mark, orbs right there." And he starts pointing. He goes, "There's three of them." And I picked my head up. And when I did, I didn't catch him. I didn't get turned up in time. And he looks at me, and the hair on his arm, you can just see is standing up, goosebumps all over his arms. He's like, "Man, I'm telling you, when this happens, Mark, this ain't good." He says, "I'm telling you right now, this is not good." I'm like, "Okay, well, let's head up, get the chairs, and just kind of come down in here a little bit and sit down." And you could tell he was visibly shaken. I mean, he was generally concerned. So when I'm in the woods, I always have a 44 on my hip. Not just for animals. I'm more concerned about, you know, people. Anyway, so I've always got a 44 on my hip. Well, we get sat down, and I had the 44 laying on my lap, and we're just sitting there, and it's dark now, and he's hearing some popping down in the bottom, and I can't hear it because I got a little bit of hearing loss from working around machinery all my life, and I couldn't hear anything. And then it started getting closer, and then I could hear it, and I kind of leaned over. I can hear it now, and it was coming up from the bottom, walking up towards us. And then I'm like, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, Daryl, there's an orb, and I point right out in front of us. I don't know, maybe 80 yards from us. It looked like it's hard to tell when it's dark and you see something. It's kind of weird to describe the glow. It's not like a flashlight, so it's not like it's shining light anywhere. It's just glowing. It's almost like a glow in the dark ball. It, emitting light, but it's not brightening everything up. But anyway, I said, Daryl, right there, there's an orb. And there was a red one right there. And he turns up and look as it was going behind a tree. And then he lost it too. And I'm like, dude, I don't know. And the hair on my arm started standing up. And I'm shaking my head. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't feel right, Daryl. I don't know, man. Something's not right. And I just happened to, I have night vision, and I threw it up and I looked to where that orb was. And from one tree to the next, one crossed over right in front of us. And it was maybe 20 yards in front of us. We caught it about mid thigh up, and it was, uh, going from our right to our left. Well, the left was where that stump was that we put all the food on there all the time. So anyway, I'm like, I freaked out and I ran backwards, trying to get out of my chair, tip the chairs over, run backwards. He's behind me. We get in the truck, and I'm shaking like a just scared crapless. And he goes, "Well, we'll go back tomorrow and get the chairs." I said, "I ain't going back tomorrow, Daryl. Let's just give it a couple days, and I'll go back with you. But don't go in here by yourself." Um, he says, "Yeah, okay." Well, he ended up going in there the next day and getting the chairs, and then like 2 days later, I went back with him. Well, I took my tape measure with me, and because I saw where he'd walk through, and I measured, and we figured it to be right around 9 foot tall. We could see about a chunk about 8 foot, but where the trail was another like good foot to 18 inches down. So, like I said, we figured he was probably about 9 foot tall. We measured. We got his. So that's the one we always called the dad in there, or Papa, whatever. We figured he was a dad. So we would find tracks anywhere from 16, 17-ish inches all the way down to, I have pictures of some that are about the size of my palms. Now, I got pretty good sized hands, but they were still, it's a pretty small track. It's just people in there barefoot. No, it's not. It's way wider than a human's foot. It's not even, kind of has the same shape, but once you really see it, it's like that's not a normal foot. So, people can say all they want about that. I'll I'll debate you till you're blue in the ground or blue in the face. Some of these tracks. So at the time I'm 6'2", and I was like around 280 pounds at the time, and I could jump up and stomp with my foot, and I couldn't get even remotely close to how deep their tracks were in that ground. But I've got some castings here at the house that are, one of them's like, I want to say it's like 16 and a half inches long. It's about 6.5, close to 7 inches wide, like across where right in front of the toes. And it's probably a good inch and a half deep in the ground. And then I've got some other smaller ones like 14 inches. I got one that's 12 inches. I tried casting that real small one that I found, and it just didn't cast. I do have pictures of it, but with my hand laying next to it, so you can see for comparison.
I don't blame you for getting up and wanting to leave and then not wanting to go back the next day, man. I'd have been the same way. And, it makes you wonder when you get into this, you don't think about the orbs and the UFO sightings and the strange things that happen, but I've always been confused and wondered what in the world was the correlation between all those things. And for the listeners, guys who don't know Daryl's story, I'll make sure to drop a link to his video down below in the description or at the very end of the video, so you guys can go watch his video. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff that happened. But what do you think is the correlation between the orbs and Bigfoot, man?
This is where I am in a lot of stuff is I don't know. There is, there are so many different beliefs out there. Where I'm at is I don't know. I don't get it. There's so much weird stuff. I've seen orbs. I've had, like I said, I don't talk a lot about it, but I've had mind speak where I saw that little bitty footprint. I went to the edge one day because it was right on the edge where it breaks down and there's a creek in the bottom, and I was going to go there and see if there's some tracks fresh in the mud. And I walked to the edge, and I'm just kind of looking to pick the way I wanted to go down. And in my head, there was a voice, and it was not my voice. Says, "No, you're not." And I just said, "Okay," and I turned around and walked away. I didn't go down in there. So um, I've got pictures of, everyone says, well, why can't you catch them with trail cams and da 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 da. Dude, we tried. We tried. I had a trail cam buried in the ground. I don't know if you know about hex gear if you're a hunter or not, but hex gear blocked all the electrical. Everybody emits electricity, and the animals can pick up on it. So this guy Mike came out with this hex gear quite a few years ago. Works fantastic. But I took it, wrapped my camera in it, buried it in the ground where all you can see is the camera lens, the motion sensor, and the infrared light. And I got pictures of that thing being pulled out of the ground and spun around backwards and laid back down. What did it? Don't know. So the craziest thing I had with my camera, same area, I took and crammed it down in a rotten stump where it was just, you could just see the lens. I had my camera set at a 6-shot burst with no delay. So essentially what that was, if something trips it off, it's going to take 6 pictures, and it's not going to stop. It's going to take 6 more, 6 more, 6 more, 6 more, continuously. As long as something is moving in front of it, it's nonstop going to take pictures. No delay between the first 6 and the next 6 and the next 6. So knowing that they, one of the things we found, they liked peanut butter, they liked cookies, they loved hard-boiled eggs, but the hard-boiled eggs had to have the shells on them. If you peeled them, they wouldn't take them. But if you left the shells on them, they'd take them. So anyway, I put out a bunch of Nutter Butters. There was a bunch of like willow branches type thing, just all over like this. So I had them all over in the forks of it and stuff. And so I sat there, or got it all set up. We left and come back a couple days later, and all the cookies are gone. I'm like, oh, okay, sweet, maybe I got something. So I'm looking through. I get home, throw the thing in my computer, and I'm looking through the card, and I come across the pictures, and literally you see the brush like this, completely full of cookies, and then it shifts and shifts back, and the cookies are gone. Nothing, and it's in the middle of 6 pictures. It's not in the middle like it took 6, took us a break and took 6 more. It was in the middle of 6 pictures, and it just shifted and shifted back, and when it came back, there's no cookies.
How do you explain that, man? Like, what are you supposed to do with that? That's some wild stuff, man. Like, what do you think is going on at that property, man? Why do you think so many strange things happen there?
I'm not, again, here we go. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know. Daryl's had quite a bit of stuff like with UFOs when he was living there. He's seen portals in the woods, all the yelling, the screaming, bending his fence posts one night and coming back the next night and bending them back straight. You know, I don't know. I don't know if it's the perfect storm with, a lot of people say there's a lot of crystal up there, so I don't know if maybe that has part of it, or I don't know. I don't know, but it's I've never seen a place like that in my life. I couldn't tell you how much time I've spent in the woods, been all over Oregon, and never seen a place like that in my life. It's weird.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but for the audience, tell them the name of that place, what he called it. I can't remember what he called that.
It calls it Al Moon Labs.
That's it. I couldn't remember the name of it. So I know a couple books have been written about that place. It's just a lot of crazy stuff. How far away was your sighting from that area?
Clear across the state on both complete opposite ends of the state.
Gotcha. You know what gets me is like it seems like depending on what area these encounters happens. It depends on how they act or how they react. I know that you get down south here, they seem to be a little bit more aggressive, and over on the West Coast, not so much. And it makes you wonder why they do some of the things that they do. But then again, I think you came up with the right answer, man. Like who knows? What are you supposed to do with that stuff?
Yeah, like you said, people that say, "Oh, I'm an expert on this." Where's your proof? You got a body at home to prove all of us that see this other stuff wrong or whatever? Hey, I'll you show me, I'll believe you. I don't, until then, I have the attitude of I don't know. And to think you have it all figured out, you don't. That Al Moon place, I'm not kidding. Daryl will tell you. I straight up said, these are animals, because this was after my first, what happened in Eastern Oregon, and there was nothing crazy that happened about it. So I was just, oh, it's an animal. And I told Daryl, I said, these woo people, these guys are just nuts. They, I don't know what the heck they're thinking. And he never said anything, but boy, he changed my mind in a hurry. Or he didn't. That place did. With all this stuff.
Being there and having those kind of experiences, that'll definitely change the way that you think about this. And for me, especially, like, you end up a lot of the times walking away with more questions than you do answers. And, I like to ask everybody this, and I think I know what you're going to say, because what else can you say? But what do you think Bigfoot is, man? After having all these encounters and experiences with Daryl, like, what's your best guess?
I'm kind of torn. I don't know what to believe. I hear people say, well, the aliens, the UFOs and stuff, they're tied in with them. Or I've heard that, the orbs are actually them. I hear people, they're interdimensional. It's hard for me to say, because I've just seen so much stuff in there that you just don't know what to believe. Like tracks. We'll follow tracks that literally left, right, left, right, left, right, left, and then nothing's changed. There's no trees that'll hold them to pick them up, or the jump or anything. To all the ground is the same. So why would all of a sudden it be taking tracks, and then it doesn't take tracks anymore? So that kind of stuff, it's hard to explain. So I definitely don't think I know they're not an animal. Yeah, they're flesh and blood, but there's more to it. But besides that, they're, whether it be they're interdimensional, or whatever, 'cause it has to be something physical, or they're not going to leave the tracks. They're not going to eat the food. It is flesh and blood, but there's more to it than that.
That's a good answer. That's a really good answer, man, and that's exactly how I feel. Like I think there's a very big spiritual aspect to these things, and I'm a believer. My faith is super important to me, and I think these things are some kind of Nephilim, fallen angel, maybe, but it's got to fit. They have to be more than flesh and blood. It just doesn't make sense for all the things that happen, and the experiences like you have. And what's crazy is there's two sides of the table. There's people that had the type of experience you did at your first one. Just kind of a not normal, that's not the right word, but just kind of a, like, hey, you see it, you walk away, there's nothing, and then you have these where there's orbs and tracks disappear, people, just tracks ending and weird stuff happening. And I had a guy on my podcast from North Carolina, and they were out deep in the woods, and they had these two set of eyeballs show up that got right next to this tent. They said this thing cocked its head, and then it just kind of, came back and stopped, and there was another little set of eyes beside it. Then they disappeared. He said, next thing you know, there's a couple of orbs floating above his tent, and then his dad was with him, said he called on the name of Jesus, and they were gone. And so there's got to be more than just flesh and blood with these things. But I always like to ask people this question as well. What would you say to somebody who is listening to this podcast that is not a believer, that doesn't believe in Bigfoot? What would you say to them?
It's kind of, I don't know. It's, they're out there and not to pick on my ex-wife or anything like that, but there's a lot of people like her that it's this. If it's not on CNN or the news, it's not true. And to think that, they're the government's released that, okay, well, yeah, there are UFOs and stuff like that. And so now they believe it after people have been telling them for years and years and years that this has been going on. It's the same thing with Bigfoot. How do you know? You don't know. You weren't there. I've heard, I have one buddy that I've never told that this happened. He spends a lot of time in the woods, never has believed in them and stuff like that, and never saw anything. I think they have to trust you for some reason. They have to trust you before they are going to show themselves to you. So there's got to be something in you. I grew up in a house that we had a lot of paranormal activity into it. So I've always been open to that kind of stuff. When somebody tells me something and it's far-fetched out there, when I first went to Bigfoot, it was like, oh, they're crazy. They're crazy. But the more I got into things and then kind of looked back at, growing up in that house where I had stuff happen all the time, how do I know that, that it's not really happening to them or whatever? Yeah, there is a ton of stuff on YouTube and stuff that, is absolute fake, which lends to the bad rap that, us crazy people, because we saw one, you're crazy, have seen. So, I would just say you need to be open-minded with it is the biggest thing, is be open-minded. Look, there's a lot of evidence out there that people can show you. I've seen some pictures. People show me pictures, and it's like holy grail pictures. And I'm like, why don't you show these? And they're, Mark, here's the deal. They're fake. It's a man in a costume. It's computer generated, all that stuff. So why am I just going to put myself in that situation where all I have to hear is all the drama, you're fake, you're this, you're that. They're real. I know they're real. I've got the pictures. Good enough for me. And I've kind of taken that under, if I had 100% proof, could absolutely prove them, I wouldn't release it. I'd show a couple of my buddies that, like Daryl and stuff, he would know. There's a couple other people I would show, but other than that, all these so-called experts and stuff, I wouldn't even give it to them.
Yeah, I think that's smart, man. And I, unfortunately, I think it's that kind of stuff that keeps a lot of people from coming forward, with their stories and their encounters. They probably have some really good evidence, but man, the ridicule that you catch and the flack you catch, it's like at the end of the day, is it really worth it? And I'm hoping to change some of that with this channel, that, I give people a safe place to come on here and share their encounters. If nothing else, to, maybe someday save somebody's life that don't know these things are out there, or to kind of help with some of the trauma, like with your encounter with that bear. I mean, it knocked you on your feet, and some of these encounters are very aggressive and not good. And hopefully, I can change some of that where people aren't as afraid or worried to come on and have a safe place to do that. But man, Mark, I really enjoyed that. I'm glad you decided to come on the podcast. I know it was a last minute deal, but man, I appreciate you being here, man.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, Daryl and I could we could go on and on with some of the stuff that we've seen down in there. I mean, it's been some crazy stuff.
I'd love to have you back on, man, and we can maybe dive into some more experiences that you had there, because that place is wild. I would love to go sometime. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, but man, I there's just so many crazy things there that you could talk about that place for absolutely ever. So I definitely have you back on again and share some of those experiences. So guys, thank you for being here with us tonight. I know you really enjoyed that podcast. This world is really strange. A lot of things in God's universe we don't understand. And that's why I always say it's important to stay vigilant, stay prayed up, and just watch your back when you're out there. But thanks for being here with me. I couldn't do this podcast without you guys. If you've got a mystery or an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at video@jscreativear.com. And like always, stay prayed up, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.